Okay, Tru Blood recap, season 1, take 17. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that. Anyway, let's get right into it. So if you are not familiar with Tru Blood, it's a series on HBO. And this Sunday, they are premiering their final season, season 7. Tru Blood is based on the Southern Vampire Mysteries, also called the Sookie Stackhouse novels, written by Charlaine Harris. So this is way before Twilight, and it's way before the Vampire Diaries. And there are a lot of similarities between those three. In the first season, Sookie Stackhouse, the protagonist, the star of the show, she's a sweet Southern girl in her early 20s. She's innocent in a myriad of ways and naive in others. So the first episode, we're introduced to a vampire, and we discover that silver is a great anti-vampire weapon. It doesn't kill them, but it weakens them and can cripple them. So they're powerless if they're encased in silver, a silver chain or a necklace or a silver net, anything like that. We also discover that if you're about to die, or if you have any type of injury, if you drink vampire blood, it'll heal those injuries almost instantly. So that's good to know. We're also introduced to Bill the Vampire. And there's a funny scene with that. Bill Compton is a vampire that was turned during the Civil War. And he returns to the main town in the show Tru Blood called Bon Temps. B-O-N, second word, T-E-M-P, like temperature. Bon Temps is located between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, about an hour or so north of New Orleans. In the fictional, well, in quote, fictional universe of the Southern Vampire Mysteries, Tru Blood. So the first season, we were introduced to all the different characters and the whole vampire world. So the vampires are in the public, and they've been in the public for 2 years. And there's the American Vampire League that is fighting for equal rights for vampires. And they believe that civil rights should be applied not just to minorities, not just all humans, but vampires as well. So in the background in a lot of the scenes, you'll see, political discussion between the AVL, the American Vampire League, and those who oppose it. And there's an ongoing thing where there's, a religious minister and then his son, and we see more of that in future seasons. So one of the main so the American Vampire League has created artificial blood in Japan, and they tell everyone that vampires don't need to drink human blood to survive. They can drink this synthetic stuff called Tru Blood, and it's served either at room temperature or they heat it up in the microwave to 98.6. And you can get Tru Blood in different blood types. So B positive, O negative, that sort of thing. As we discover that Tru Blood isn't really satisfying the vampires. It'll sustain them, but there's a lot more to drinking human blood that can be synthesized. So Sookie Stackhouse, she has a brother, Jason. Sookie lives with her grandmother, Gran. Jason lives in his parents' house, their parents' house. Sookie and Jason's parents were killed in a flash flood when they were like 9 or 10. What else can I say? Oh, Sookie is a telepath, so she can hear everyone's thoughts. And she tries not to read her friends' thoughts. But when she gets stressed or, emotional, she can't block it out. So Bill starts dating Sookie, and Sookie asks her grandmother, how she feels about it. And since Bill is really polite because he was born in the South in 1800s, and he, excuse me. So Bill is really polite, and Gran approves of his behavior, even though he's a cold-blooded killer because he's a vampire. It's a stretch for me that, a grandmother can condone her only granddaughter dating someone like that. And Sookie hasn't had a real boyfriend. She's been on dates, but she could always hear the thoughts of the boys in high school and beyond. So she's never really had a boyfriend. So Bill is her first. And later in the season, she gets intimate, but there's some pretty hot scenes with her and Bill. And later in the season, we discover more about the vampire network. So each state has a monarchy, so a king or a queen. In Louisiana, it's a queen. And under the monarchy is different territories. So there's a sheriff, and each vampire sheriff governs each territory. So we see in Shreveport, Eric. We are introduced to Eric, and he is the sheriff of Area 5. And he is the owner of Fangtasia. It's kind of a cheesy name, but they explain it that puns were rather humorous to vampires in the past. So Fangtasia is a vampire club, and this is a club like anything else, except vampires frequent there and fangbangers. And fangbangers are humans who have sex with vampires. And there's also humans who like to be drained by vampires. And some of them are just, like goth types. And some of those are trying to become vampires. We discover later on how a vampire is created. And a vampire has to drain all the human blood from a human and then replace it with their own blood. But wait, there's more. And then they have to be buried in the ground overnight, sometimes for more than one night. So it's that bond that is created. And when a vampire creates another vampire, it's like their progeny, their children. And they are controlled by their creator vampire. So anything the parent vampire says, the children has to obey. If it's mentioned in passing, they can kind of get around it, but if it's a direct order, they'll say, "As your maker, I command you," and then they're powerless to resist. We discover some of the myths about vampires that were created by vampires in the past to throw off humans and to prove that they weren't vampires. So you can see vampires in mirrors. You can see the reflection. Garlic doesn't harm them. It's just annoying. Silver, as I mentioned before, can cripple them. It can damage them. So if you have silver like inside you from a silver bullet, it'll cripple the vampire until the silver is expelled. So the healing of the vampire will take place, and it'll push the silver bullet out eventually. What else? Wood. Wood will kill vampires or explode them, and you need to stake them or otherwise get some sort of wood into the vampire heart, and then they will explode. If vampires go out into the sun, they will burn up, Not right away. We discover in later seasons that, I guess it's in season 2, the older the vampire, the quicker that happens. But then in season 3 and 4, there's another vampire who's not 2,000 years old, but 3,000, and he doesn't evaporate right away, like the one in season 2. I'm not going to mention names right now, because I want you to watch every episode. It's really good. There's so many great characters. Let's see. Sookie's best friend, Tara, I guess that's how you say it. She has an attitude, and it's just hysterical. Her dialogue is just hysterical. And her cousin, Tara ends up working at Merlot's as a bartender, and her cousin Lafayette works in the kitchen. Lafayette is fabulous. He's flamboyant and fabulous. He's also the cook, and he's pretty empowered. There's one scene where he beats up some rednecks. And he's also a drug dealer, and he deals in vampire blood. Oh, wait, was that in season 1 or season 2? Ooh. Anyway, he's a dealer. No, it's in season 1, because he has a vampire donor that he trades a male donor who's Milton from Office Space, by the way. It's funny to see him as a vampire. And that vampire doesn't do anything with his powers. He stays at home, he watches television. Lafayette trades sexual favors with him for vampire blood. And Lafayette sells the vampire blood for extreme profit. And then you discover that if you take too much of it, you can become an addict, like a crazy addict. But if you take it in the right way, like with someone else, or just a little bit, like 1 drop, maybe 2, then you get an enhanced experience. So you either have hallucinations with another person, or just all of your senses are heightened. Jason, Sookie's brother, is a high school football star who, I guess he's been out of high school for, 10 years, 5 years? Anyway, he's still really athletic. He works on road construction with his best friends, Hoyt and Renee. I guess Renee is his best friend in season 1, and then that changes to Hoyt in later seasons. Jason is a womanizer. He sleeps with all the hot women at Merlot's, all the waitresses. Merlot's is the only restaurant bar in town of Bon Temps. So, and for some reason, there's so many hot people in a small town like that. Percentage-wise, like hot people, like in the show Tru Blood, are like 3 to 5% of the total population. But somehow in Tru Blood, there's a huge number of young people, like early 20s, and they're all extremely hot. There's a few that are just average, or medium hot to average, I would say. And then there's older people that are just average. And then there's, the old people that are, hot, or, well, I shouldn't say hot, but they're attractive in their own distinguished way. And maybe that's just HBO, and maybe that's just television, but it is. I wish all towns were like that. So men and women. And Jason, I guess in the first episode, his lover is killed, and he's a suspect. And then later on, he starts to redate one of his exes, a waitress at Merlot's, Dawn. She's also murdered. And then Jason meets this really nice girl, one of my favorite actresses, Lizzie Kaplan. She was in Mean Girls and My Best Friend's Girlfriend and some other things too. I just love her. So she and Jason are truly in love. And unfortunately, towards the end of the season, she's killed as well. And Jason is just distraught. And he actually thinks he killed her by accident. Jason isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. But he just kind of faces everything wholeheartedly, kind of like Sookie does, but in his own his own way. Towards the end of the season, I forgot to mention Deputy Sheriff Andy. Andy Doug's like this. Kind of like Uncle Jimbo's friend with throat cancer. And then Andy's cousin, Terry, also works at Merlot's. And Terry is Sam's best friend. He's an Iraqi veteran, and he suffers from PTSD. Is that right? Post-traumatic stress syndrome. Oh, well, whatever I said. So he does some strange things, but he has a good heart, and he's kind of recovering, from his tour in Iraq. Iraq. I lost my train of thought. What was I saying? Sam Merlot owns the only bar and grill in Bon Temps, and you discover later on he's a shapeshifter. I was talking about Jason, wasn't I? And Renee. Okay, back to Sam. You kind of get this feeling that there's this dog that hangs around Merlot's, and he kind of like looks out for Sookie. But then there's one scene where you see Sam and the dog in the same shot. So you're like, kind of throws you off. And then later you discover that Sam did change into the dog. But there is another dog. So Sam is a shapeshifter, also called shifters for short. And when a shifter relaxes, he turns back into his human form, and then he's naked. So towards the end, Sookie, needs some protection and billows away, and she invites the dog to sleep on her bed, and then she wakes up and there's naked Sam in her bed. And for some reason, Sam forgot how shifting works, that when you relax or fall asleep, you turn back into your human self. So, he shows her, she doesn't believe him, so he shifts in front of her, and then she believes him. And Sam has always had a thing for Sookie, and they try to date for a little bit. And Sam is, opposed to her dating Bill, the vampire, for her own safety, and then for his own, wants, because he desires her himself. That doesn't last long. I don't think more than half of a date. And you discover Sam has a little bit of a temper, but otherwise he's this really sweet guy who can change into dogs. Or other animals. You discover in later seasons he has to look at an animal intensely, and then he can shift into that animal. There's a hint that werewolves are real. And then, back to the main story arc for season 1 is there's murders in Bon Temps, and Gran only remembers 2 murders for her entire life, and now there's murders all over the place. And spoiler alert, it turns out to be Renee, with a friendly Cajun. I just love that accent. Tonton B. They didn't do too many of the Cajun idioms, which are kind of cool. There's one, well, I'll see if I can do this. I love you more than a pea love corn. I love you more than a pig loves corn. There's a few references about pigs that in a good way, but yeah, there's certain phrases that Cajuns say that are unique only to them. And Cajun it's it's a mix of French and English, and then there's other words that are completely Cajun and not French or English at all. And then there's a heavy accent that has evolved over hundreds of years, not just Louisiana Purchase, but before that. The French settled in the Mississippi Valley in Louisiana because it was so rich in wildlife. So they would hunt for pelts and other things, and they just settled there, and they got used to the swamp. And they created their own little like swamp boats. They're kind of like gondolas in Italy, shallow wooden boats that are carved out of one tree, like a cypress tree, and then they're moved along with a pole. So you could stand and look into the murky waters to see if there was an alligator, or if you wanted to spearfish, or I don't know. Where was I? So Renee, spoiler alert, he turns out to be the serial killer, and he killed Gran. And his motivation is to kill all humans, including his sister. When he had a different name, he just has this rage, and he doesn't like humans sleeping with vampires or having anything to do with vampires. So instead of killing vampires, which would have been better, I think, he kills humans. Yeah. So that's an odd twist. And one thing with Tru Blood is there's so many different levels, which makes it such a great story. There's 13 books in the written series, and there will be 7 seasons in the TV series. And the TV series crams everything in, and each season has a main theme, and it doesn't parallel exactly with the books because there's 13 books and 7 seasons, but they seed the next season in the previous one. Sometimes at the end, sometimes just hints here and there, and then they go back to them in the next season. So it makes it more exciting because you're like, oh my God, I remember that. So towards the end of the season, they seed Marianne, and she meets Tara, and gives her a place to stay because Tara doesn't have a place to stay, which didn't make sense to me because she could always stay with Sookie. She could have just called Sookie and was like, can I stay at your house? Tara has an alcoholic mother who makes a dramatic shift with Miss Jeanette exorcising her demon. It turns out it's Tara gets the same treatment and has to pay a lot more money, and it turns out she's scammed. But there's a critical thing that happens during that, not to Tara's benefit at all. But so those are the seeds for season 2, which I will do in a separate broadcast. Is this a broadcast? It's a recording that is recasted, I guess. Broadcasted at a later date. Is that everything? Can I talk about Eric? Yeah, okay. So we're introduced to the main characters. It's get to know the Southern vampire world. We're introduced to vampires, all the characters, the overall theme. The story arc for season 1 is Renee being the serial killer. I think that's it. If you want up-to-date news on everything sci-fi, not just vampires, not just Tru Blood, I cover zombies, superheroes, anything sci-fi related, Game of Thrones, that sort of thing. Follow me on Twitter. I update like every day on Twitter at scifielements. I periodically do blog posts, sometimes 3 to 4 times a week, sometimes more. Sometimes I'll do breaking news on my blog. and Twitter. My blog is scifielements.wordpress.com. I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/scifielements. I post around once a week, sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes once a week, sometimes less. I'm on Facebook too. You can find my links to my blog on Facebook. I post photos of cosplay on Facebook. It's facebook.com/scifielements1. I know that's different, and I do have Sci-Fi Elements, but I kind of messed it up a little bit. And it's under a different email, and anyway, that's a long story, and I can't change it. I thought I could just switch emails and be real clever, but yeah. They won't let me link the two. I tried. I used to be able to do that, but Facebook changes their policy. I don't like Facebook that much, so I'm not on there too much, but sometimes I'll have events, and I'll post those on Facebook. I had vote for your favorite cosplay video last year. What did we do this year? Big Bang Theory tourism. It was like a scavenger hunt, go to all the different places of Big Bang Theory. We're going to do that again this fall. We're going to be going to Fox Studios and protesting in cosplay. Hopefully. I'm going to Comic-Con. I'm going to rally the troops. So X-Men will go back to Marvel, or at least share. I think they can share. I think that's the best. That's another podcast entirely. Yeah, if you want to meet up for video or podcasting or just cosplay photos, I go to all the cosplay Comic-Con events in Southern California. So the rest of this year, there'll be Anime Expo coming up in just a few weeks. There's Comic-Con, third week in July, of course. The Super Bowl, 130,000 people inside with tickets, 400,000 about outside. Those numbers may be, or the outside numbers may be a little inflated. It could be 200,000. But anyway, the entire Gaslamp district downtown is packed with people. So if you don't have tickets, you can still go and have fun. There's the Walking Dead Escape in the baseball stadium, Petco Park, on Friday night. There's, last year, was it Friday or Saturday? I think it was Friday night. Metallica had a panel Friday afternoon and advertised their concert at the local bar. I mean, it's Metallica, right? And they played at this small bar in the downtown Gaslamp district of San Diego. It's crazy. So there's tons to do. So you don't have to have tickets. And this year, Comic-Con sold tickets individually by day. So there's going to be a lot more scalping. Just as a warning, if you buy scalp tickets, you could be banned from Comic-Con for life. And you're going to have to pay outrageous ticket prices too. But yeah, I don't want to condone that at all. And I don't have tickets because I got screwed by the Epic waiting room. I had tickets. I entered in my credit card. I hit submit and I got an error message and that was the end. And I even volunteered and I got kicked out of that too. So I'm not happy, but I'm still going. I'll be going to the Geeky Awards, Kamikaze, Long Beach, Comic-Con, Comic and Horror Con in the fall. There's a Long Beach in the spring, very small. Actually, it was 2 days this year, which is huge for them in the spring. Usually it was just comics, like only comics, no cosplay or occasional cosplay, just the really hardcore fans. And then now it's expanded and they had several rooms booked. In the fall, it's a huge, they had, the Batmobile, the Turtle Van outside and a bunch of stuff going on inside. I said Kamikaze, right? Gosh, is there one more in the fall? yeah, anyway, yeah, I'm usually there. Sometimes in cosplay, sometimes not. If you want to be interviewed, you want to be on my channel, just let me know. All you have to do is be willing and know something about sci-fi. If you're in cosplay, just tell me about your character, and that'll be good enough. So, Tru Blood. I would rather suffer the true death than not watch the premiere of True Dead. Oh, one thing in season 1, Bill Compton, played by Stephen Moyer, always says, Sookie, Sookie, Sookie. It gets better as the seasons go on. Anyway, have fun. And if you haven't watched Tru Blood, please watch it now. I enjoyed all of it. It's so well written. The characters are incredible. The plot is multi-leveled. Some of the best television out there. I don't even know if it counts as television because it's HBO. You know, it's on the quality of Game of Thrones. It's not Game of Thrones, and I'm not going to compare the two, but it's really high quality. It's